basically what is subconscious. So the way Joe Dispenza talks about this, it's like when your thoughts become your actions and then actions become habit, then that becomes your subconscious. It becomes what's the word I'm looking for? Not like, it's like becomes like breathing. When you do something enough that it becomes a habit or just a way of being, then that becomes like an autonomous. It's not autonomous. It's like autonomous. I can't remember. But it's like there's a function. There's like a piece of your part of your brain that actually like controls your automatic functions, like breathing, your heart rate, everything like that. And you can actually train your brain to actually perform certain things by just changing the way you behave and the way you think about stuff. And that's how you like make conscious thoughts, subconscious thoughts. It's the same process.
Yeah, autonomic, right? Because like you have your sympathetic, parasympathetic, and all of that runs on the same type of line, right?
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
So you
And
know the brain better than I do.
oh, no, just body, healthcare educated as far as that goes. But no, I love that habits build your beliefs, right? Like there's such a freedom there that I don't think people understand. Like, how empowering is that really to get the habits you choose on a daily basis will change your entire belief structure, which we just established creates your reality. So
Exactly.
you have a key essential ability to change your reality by simply changing your habits.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not something where it's just like, I'm going to do this once today and then suddenly my life has changed. No, it's like a continuous thing. You can't just change your habit for one day. Like, it's just like going to the gym. You're not going to go to the gym one day and be like, all right, I'm good. Like, I'm all set. Like, you have to do it every day consistently for a period of time before that, like, changing that behavior actually becomes a habit. If you do something for like 3 weeks, that's when you actually start developing the habit. And then you start seeing the results. So yeah, it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight, but you're absolutely right. It's totally freeing. It's totally liberating. And it allows you to be anything.
It's interesting because that same exact concept is helping me through my uncomfortable zone right now, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm finding myself sitting in these meetings with like state officials and all these high level executives. And there's such a belief inside of me that's like, I'm not good enough, or, I'm missing something, or I need to develop something bigger, greater,
Yeah.
and I'm using that same concept but in a different way. I'm going, look at my life, look at all the work I've put into my professional career, and look at all of the opportunities I've been giving, and look at all the success I've had. Why would this change right now? So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
interesting how that concept can be projected into the future or used to stabilize reality, or the
Yeah.
present, I should say.
Do you feel like you're in your comfort zone now?
Fuck no, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Because because you said like it helps you move through your comfort. And I was like, do you mean discomfort? I wasn't sure. So
oh yeah, my bad. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant. Is it helps me move through my uncomfortable situations, and it's interesting because I, I don't know if I shared it with you, but I woke up a few months ago, and what I mean by wake up is I literally like I think I was walking, and I was like, holy shit, I've been asleep. Like, how long have I been asleep for? Like, how long have I let this go on? And I realized that I had just clicked on an autopilot. Like, I had just allowed life to just be whatever it is. And I realized that in that same essence of doing that, that I let these patterns just start playing for me instead of me consciously deciding and being a part of what was happening. I like deferred, like, I'll just go ahead and lean on these patterns, and it scared the shit out of me, man. Like, scared me so bad that I had to start reevaluating everything, my thoughts, like, and don't take this the wrong way, but I even started looking at my wife like, how did you even be okay with me since I've been asleep for however fucking long, but obviously, it's not her deal, but
yeah, of course.
But that's how deeply I started reevaluating things. So, to key into the conversation that we're having, I am fascinated with how intention will literally rock your entire boat, will start to fast track you into new habits, will help you start shifting your entire reality. And I know you and Brandon are really good with goal setting. Goal setting is just another word for intentions,
No, I
and
agree 100%. Like that's the way I view intentions, as like it's goal setting, and then taking that goal and like you envision it. Like, what does it look like to get there? And then you take a step back from that and you start realizing like all the different things you have to do to get to that goal. And then you start doing them. And so it's not just like goal setting, it is intention, it is manifestation, it is like creating your own reality by changing whatever it is you need to change in your day-to-day life to get to where you want to be.
And it's such a wonderful concept. Like, oh, I'm feeling a little lost today. Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to be doing that. And voila, you're back in your freaking groove. Like, I think that's where like the whole discipline talk comes in, right? Is like,
Mhm.
I know you, Brandon, was kind of turned us on to Marcus Aurelius, and Marcus Aurelius has led me to some Senator Xenos or something like that. I don't know if you've seen, but
You know?
also
Is it,
something like that, like Cenas or something like that.
oh, I don't know that one.
Uh,
Go
but
on. Sorry.
anyways, no, just all the same concept. And so also a philosophical teacher, and that's the thing that I was listening to a thing about him today, and he was talking about discipline and how really in essence discipline is being able to hone into that desire, that intention over and over and over again, so that you continue to pursue the right change,
Mhm.
or manifestation, or reality shift, for this conversation. So
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, like that's also like an act of extreme self-love, like practicing
mm,
that discipline, you know. um it's making a choice to be better for yourself and to yourself by choosing not to freaking eat that cupcake at work, or fucking, you know, don't eat a bunch of Popeye's chicken for lunch, you know.
and I love the deeper mental practice of this, right? Because I heard a psychologist talking today that they have done these studies, and you're 3 times more likely to learn from a mistake when you love and embrace yourself versus beat yourself up and try and force yourself into to some type of education over a mishap. And so, it's kind of crazy when we look at the concept of dancing, right? Like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Well, I feel like you can get into this flow where it's nothing but propelling you forward. There is
Yeah.
no necessarily stepping back, and I think that's just a primal concept. Is what is your self-talk, and what's your go-to? Is it a love? Is it a love for yourself? Is it
Mhm.
an embracing and understanding, or is it a defeatist, or an upsetness? Which we've all heard the talks by David Bayer, and put you into a primal state. You don't create anything in a primal state, other than more primal state.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful key to unlock that door.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of you know who Dave Mustaine is?
No, I'm not familiar.
Dave Mustaine is like he's the lead singer and the guitarist for Megadeth.
Oh, okay, okay.
And he was also the lead guitarist for Metallica. Like before Metallica made it big, like they kicked him out of the band in 1983, and he was like, "Fuck those guys! I'm gonna be bigger, better than they ever could be." And like he went on to be like mega successful, sold like 53 million records worldwide. But then Metallica sold like 180 million records worldwide. And he was interviewed in like 2003, and he was like sad about it, like the fact that he wasn't more successful than Metallica, and he was like still butthurt by it, you know.
Because that was
But
his
then
intention, right?
because it was, yeah,
Doesn't,
it
yeah.
was he didn't put value in the fact that like, hey, I could be this successful person on my own, You know, I can do this. I am doing this. I should be happy about this. He was so upset that he got kicked out of Metallica, and he never got over it. So he never like actually was happy with his accomplishments. But then you look at, there's another guy who's in a very similar situation, this guy named Pete Best. He was the original drummer for the Beatles. And way before the Beatles got big, they kicked him out too. And he was like, went into this massive depression, and he was like suicidal for years. And then he finally like came out of it and went and did a couple, you know, he toured with a couple bands and still did his drummer thing. But he ended up marrying and settling down. And like when they interviewed him years later, he was like, being kicked out of the Beatles was the best thing that ever happened to me, because he had the value. He had a different value system, you know. So it comes down. It also comes down to like what your value system is. What are you prioritizing? What matters to you? What do you care about that's like actually going to make you happy? What's your drive? What's your why? You
Yeah,
know?
that's the biggest thing, right? The drive. And we're all human. We have this temptation of ego, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
seems like, case number one with Megadeth, his ego completely cut his head off, like
Exactly.
that, he couldn't even settle into his own successes. And this is interesting that you bring this up, because I was thinking about this today, that the concept of financial wealth, or being well off, right? I think takes different context. And what I'm trying to get at is that if you constantly are focusing on making money, you become a slave to money. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're constantly growing inside of feeling secure, feeling financially wealthy, stepping into your own value, worth, and wealth, then it just naturally attracts to you. And it's
Exactly.
so interesting, because if you look at the core concept of what the law of attraction is, you would think that option A, where you're hunting money, you're seeing money, you're wanting money, you're allowing money, right, would enact this law to work for you. But it really doesn't. It almost stops it and prevents it. But when you accept yourself as worthy and valuable, and that abundance flows into your life, and you feel that throughout your body, not feeling like a millionaire, but knowing you're a millionaire, that's
Yeah.
when the real law of attraction takes place. That's when the real magic happens.
And I think there's a process to that, you know. It's not just I mean, it's future thinking. Like you're planning that stuff out, you know. And you're right. You're not forcing it, but you're like, it's like playing the magic wand game. Wouldn't it be nice? You know, wouldn't it be nice if I could have $1 million? And you're just like picturing that in your mind. You're imagining it. Like you're living your life like you're in that moment already, and you're giving gratitude for that. And then that's how it comes to be. And there is planning to it, of course. Like there's going to be steps that you have to take to get there. It's not just going to be all like, you can't just like only manifest stuff. You actually have to do the work. It's too, but there's a process to it. And when you're enjoying that process, that's when the real magic happens.
That's the key, right? Is how do you design your processes to be enjoyable? And we all know that not everything is going to be consistently enjoyable. That's
Yeah.
life challenges you in that way. And that's where I struggle with David Goggins, because I think he has such an amazing perception with everything. And we all know his background. He's been very open to it, and not everybody is going to have the same path. But maybe it's a fear of mine, and maybe it's a realization that I need to have, that no matter what you do in life, there's going to be more work to be done. And
Yeah.
the work, the journey, the process is more where the excitement takes place, than
That's
the
it.
destination, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's just a mere concept. And one thing that I know I'm definitely at in my life right now is taking theoretical concept, practicing it, and becoming a master. So even this podcast is a way of stepping into practice, is a way of taking theory and making it something tangible, real. And so this whole entire motion right now is actually a huge stepping stone in my process, my formula, my growth, so
Yeah.
it's really neat that we could be having this theoretical concept and practicing at the same time.
Right.
Yeah,
Serendipitous in a way. That's pretty awesome, you know?
yeah.
And
How
I
many?
wanted to, I was thinking like how sometimes you have to get it was like what you were saying, like you finding the motivation through your comfort, your discomfort, you know? Like a lot of the times you have to get uncomfortable and do things that make you uncomfortable in order to, even when you're like, just because you're not ready to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like you just have to jump in and do things sometimes, you know? And
Right.
I was going to say we're doing the same thing right now, but this kind of just feels like this is just natural because we do this, you know, this is just what we do. Just have conversations about
Mhm.
life.
Have you ever noticed though, when you push yourself to start, all of a sudden it becomes natural? Like
Yeah.
when we were children, and or I shouldn't speak for you, but when I was a child and I would go to a taekwondo tournament, right? It doesn't matter if it was the 100th tournament I'd ever competed in. Before I stepped out on that mat, I was nervous as hell, man. I was so uncomfortable. Even if I beat every single person there before in a sparring tournament, there was just something about the anxiety, the tension, like the whole entire everything coming to life. And then like I had to perform, right? Like it was on.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing else that was going to do anything in that moment in time other than me either getting my ass kicked or kicking some ass. And that was it.
Mhm.
And what's interesting to me is that happened with everything I did. When I played baseball, when I played football, before I go to an interview, I still get these like, anxiety or butterflies. But the moment it starts, right? The moment it just, then it becomes natural. So it's almost like the fear, the anxiety, it's really the unnatural part of the whole
The
process.
fear and the anxiety is like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but no, like the fear and the anxiety is like, that's your ego being like, no, 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 you have to be careful. You might not do it right, you know? And then you jump in and you do it, and your ego is just like, my bad. I'll take a back seat and just shut up for now. You do your thing, human, you know? And it's
That's
crazy because
funny.
the ego is there. Like, I think the ego is very much, it's like you said, it's like a primal state. It's a primal thing that's there to protect us. And I think it was more useful when we were cavemen, you know? But like now in our modern day society, the ego kind of like gets in the way because we don't need to be worried about a woolly mammoth or some other crazy animal killing us. You know, we have like some luxuries that afford us a life where we don't have to worry about some of the more primitive needs that we have, you know? So we can kind of put the ego aside and just do things now without the fear of death, literally the fear of death. And that's what the ego is there to do, is to protect us from death. You know, it made us make better choices, but now it's kind of like getting in the way. It's like, wait, I have to protect you still. I have to protect you, but it's really just fucking everything up. That's what it does most of the time, you know?
It's so interesting. I want to pause on that concept for a minute.
Okay.
How many times do we actually take in our surroundings? Now I don't like to compare because compare does give rise for ego. But let's just go 50 years back, right, to 1970. Dude, I was thinking about just the Christmas gifts that were given in 1970 versus the Christmas gifts that I'm preparing to give to my children, right? Like a Red Ryder wagon was like the fucking shit.
Yeah.
Like being able to get a sled, dude, was like, you might as well have got a fucking Xbox at that point
Right?
in
A
time,
BB gun was a BB gun was the end, dude.
the
Like put
BB
your eye out with
gun.
that thing.
Right? But it was a risk. It was a risk we were all willing to take, or
Yeah.
well, they were willing to take at that point in time. So sorry, I guess I'm getting a little out of control. I'm being hushed.
I just
Um, Jake says hi. She gave a pathetic wave and a nod, and like Mary Poppins and a twitch of her nose, she was out the door. But you know, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me to think that the ego can still trick us in that way.
Mhm.
When, man, we have a refrigerator full of food. You know, well, and I, you know, I'm speaking for the majority of Americans, not
Right.
necessarily the world, but you know, we go. I travel 43 miles to one way to my job. You know, like back in the day, to walk that long would be crazy.
Yeah.
So and the only reason why I wanted to pause on that for a moment is to really soak up the blessings that just pour into us because of the time period that we were born in, you know,
Yeah.
that you
Exactly.
don't have to do anything else except for just show up. And, you know, this leads me to a concept that I wanted to bring up today because it's stuck in my mind, and I'm trying to work it out, like, you know, undoing a knot. Um,
Let's fucking talk about it then.
this
Sorry.
concept of wasting time, right? Which is funny because I wasted all that time to build up to the concept of wasting time. But you know, time is a resource that is expendable. It's not something that you can work harder to get. And I understand that that can be negotiable, right? You treat yourself well, you eat well, you can elongate your life. Who knows, right? That's a
Right.
philosophical question. Some people think you have a stamp on the bottom of your foot that says it doesn't matter what you do. This is the time you're going to go. But taken into essence that we give up time for money, that we give up time to stare at a TV screen or a phone screen, that we squander this resource that we know is limited. Like, it is maybe one of the few things that we can honestly say is a limitation in our physical world. And, you know, it's just fascinating to me, you know, how I was saying that I woke up, I realized I had gone into autopilot. Like, you know, that was squandering one of my most precious resources. And
Yeah.
so the way that it was introduced to me by the Marcus Aurelius and the people of that time is that you can live a wide life. That may not be the goal to live a long life, but live a wide life, live a
Mm.
fulfilled, you know, big life. And um, you know, you have shared so much of my life with me. I mean, shoot, I met you when I was like, what, 6 or 7,
Yeah.
and just thinking about all the times when we hung out, you know, you and Jonas taking us down to the high school, you taking me to Buffalo Bills to wash, you know, for like one of my first jobs ever to make cash. And you know, the concepts that you put into play was fascinating to me, and it made my life wide. You know, I think it should go on recording that you took a concept of having older brothers that picked on you, and you felt how shitty that was, and that you didn't want to perpetuate that. And so for us, you wanted to be more of a mentor, a friend, a helper. And I think the impact of that has been so huge. And to tie it into this concept is that's one of those widening parts of my life, right? It is just your presence and just your intentions in that way has allowed me to realize that was a part of my life that went very wide. Those are times and days that I will cherish forever. You know, those memories are gold. And you
Thank
know,
you, man. That means a lot. But I mean, thank you. But I also love the concept of widening your life, and I'm glad I was able to do that at that time. It's freaking cool. Thank you, man.
well, just like tuning in on a radio, you know, like there's all this opportunity to widen your life every second, every moment. And it's amazing how often we don't step into that. Like, we don't soak in that awareness. Like, we don't take that to the next level. And it's almost begging us constantly, right, to be there. And so you know, the wide concept, I feel like that's my balance. with pushing myself to do more, to be more, is this going to widen my life, or is this just going to get me straight to where I'm trying to go? And so there's kind of an interesting thing about that, but the concept of wasting a resource is phenomenal because I'm a tree hugger at heart.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know you are. Yeah, we both are. But I wanted to step back and like take a look at that concept where you said it's kind of like tuning into a radio where you have all these opportunities to widen yourself. I don't think, and I do this all the time, but I don't think a lot of people actually look at that as opportunities. They look at those things as like, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I need to do this.
Mm.
But instead of looking at it as like an opportunity, how grateful should I be that I get to do this? How grateful should I be that I have the opportunity to do this? You know, like I should be going to the gym. I'm not going to the gym. I should be eating healthier. I'm not. I need to be eating healthier. But instead, it's like I have the opportunity to make an improvement in my life. How awesome is that? You know. So it comes back to like mindset and your outlook on it. You know. Um, you have the opportunity to widen your life by working out or eating better or spending more time with your kids or spending more time on a passion project like doing a podcast.
So it's interesting because maybe that's where the ego is rearing its ugly head, right? Like, I'm
Yeah,
going to protect you from getting out of security. I'm going to
right.
protect you from not being in comfort.
That's
And
exactly what it is.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, succumbing to that. And I love David Goggins' approach to this, right? Like, he made his ego his bitch, right? Like, I mean, really,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm going to pull out Goggins. Like, if there's ever a moment where I'm feeling that, he uses it to his advantage, right? And what does he call it? Pulling it out of his bag of shit. And,
Yeah.
you know, so anyways, point is that I want to develop these tools, and I know several years ago I had expressed a concept to you that I wanted to write a book called the Conscious Tool Belt. So
Uh-huh.
when you find yourself in certain situations, you have these tools to pull out that you can use to aid you in completing the project or situation or wherever you're at, right? Bless you. But um, I feel like there's this adjustment that's happening inside of me right now. And the best way I can explain it is it's stable. Earlier
Mm.
in life, when I had been seeking this knowledge, it seemed to be rocky, right? It seemed to be based on almost like mysticism. Um,
Yeah.
and right now where my development is seems extremely stable. It seems sustainable, and and that is, I think, beautiful in itself.
Well, and I think a lot of that, like where it's where you feel unstable in it is where you have like a cognitive knowledge of it, like you know it up here, but you don't know how to practice it as well. And so when it becomes stable is when you're actually able to put those tools into practice and use them on a regular basis.
Mm,
Maybe.
I,
I mean,
I
that's what it
know.
is for me. That's the way I look at it anyway.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And a lot of the times, I think I confuse being intoxicated with being tranquil, being peaceful, being happy. Um, and so, the other day, I had an interesting experience where I had found a journal of my mom. She had documented the last few years of her life, and from her perception, there was definitely a contention of how I showed up, and
Yeah.
so I started walking because I really didn't know what else to do, and walking is a form of meditation for me. But anyways, after processing my emotions and going through things, there came this point where I embraced my fears, where I embraced what was happening, and this tranquility washed over me. And I'm happy to report I was stone sober. There was nothing on board, and I probably felt the most stable in my emotions that I have in years.
Just from walking?
From, I think, more facing my fears.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'll get a little bit more granulated with it. Um, there's definitely a huge side of my family that feels like I didn't support my mom. I didn't show up for my mom, and that, and really her time of need, I abandoned her. And I can totally understand how they saw that, and how they would feel that. Do I think that's my truth? No. Do I think that there's maybe aspects of how I could have showed up in a bigger way? Of course,
Mhm.
but that's all happened in the past. And so for me to let something in the past drag me to a point where it's going to affect my now and my future would be ignorant. So what's the alternative? Stare it straight in the face, right? Like, what's the concept? What's it going to do? What's the ability for me? And so by simply asking myself these questions, by remembering what my mom and I's relationship really was, and how I am the man I am today because of her, and knowing that whatever happened in those final few years of her life would never be the core concept of our story.
Mhm.
And a lot of this seems to be more justification. It's not really more of a justification. It's more of a rooting into truth, and to
Mm.
knowing that that other people can have their world, they can have their
Mm.
reality, they can have their perception. That's totally fine. It does not have to impede on mine. It does not have to even affect mine. And this is where it gets really kind of twisted, is even my mom's perception doesn't really affect mine. I mean, I
Mhm.
can allow it to, but it's my perception. It's who I am. And I'm going to continue to choose how I feel about this situation. And let me be really honest for a moment. I had been hiding from these feelings for 3, 4 years now. These feelings had shown up in my solar plex as this, like, tightening, constricting pain. In fact, even talking about it right now kind of brings it a little bit up.
Yeah.
And just the fact that I chose to look at it, that I asked the pain, why are you here? That I stayed open to explore it. It brought this stability in my emotions. It brought this stability even in my intuition. It helped clear this portion of my mind out that had been foggy, for lack of better terms. And it really brought this huge stability to my life.
Well, I mean, and you did two really cool things right there with that. Like when you said you like just opened yourself up to it, said, "Why are you here?" That's just you holding space for your own feelings and your emotions about shit. And in doing that, you were able to kind of conquer this egotistical idea. And I don't want to say egotistical because I don't mean like egotistical, but it's like an ego. It's something that comes from the ego that you have to value these other people's opinions, that you weren't there for your mom.
Mhm.
That's not your story, and you're letting that story, like that story kind of impacted you, and so you, by processing that feeling, you were able to overcome all of that, and that is fucking amazing, dude. Good
I,
job.
Thank you, thank you. Here's the other counterpart to this that I'm still trying to unravel. I've had no desire to drink. I've had no desire to smoke. Like, it's almost as if the emotional turmoil had been leading me down a path to try and forget.
Mhm.
And and going back to that concept of time, time being your most valuable resource. And I was trying to forget. I was trying to,
Yeah.
push it away. It is fascinating to me. And it just, anyways, it just makes me revel in this moment. Like, it makes me want to never ever take anything for granted because there's such gems hiding in every single second.
And that's something I've always admired about you, man, is you can always find something. You always have like a way to like get through things and find like the brightest light at the end of every fucking tunnel. You know what I mean? And I love that about you. And I agree with you on everything you're saying. I just see it as a little bit darker for me.
Right?
You know, like my light isn't as bright at the end of the tunnel, but that's okay. Like I think there's value in like feeling those negative feelings and processing all that. Like I call it the shadow. Like everybody's got their shadow, and you have to like acknowledge it and allow it and allow it to be. You can't just drink it away. You can't smoke it away. You can't snort it away. You can't do any of that shit to get rid of it. Like you just have to exist in harmony with it, because that stuff's always going to be there. And it's a matter of addressing those things and just taking life by the horns. Because you're right, life is finite, time is finite, and you only have so much of it. So why waste any of it? Like not reveling in every moment that you have, even the bad ones.
You know, it's interesting because as you were saying that and you're using the shadow, I couldn't help but to think about Peter Pan, you
Yeah,
know, and how he chased his shadow into the room, and you know how his shadow's constantly fucking with him.
yeah,
How he's, constantly trying to catch his shadow. And I think it's easily relatable to blind spots. And I think I shared with you recently that a huge blind spot came into my focus. And so I'm continuously bringing my awareness to that, because it will so easily just go right back into my blind spot if I don't catch hold and keep that thing illuminated until there is no way it can sneak around anymore. And
yeah,
I feel like uh, having great friends that will consciously build with me gives me that opportunity to see that. And maybe that's one of the intentions that we have with this podcast, is maybe hoping or helping somebody else find a blind spot, see something
yeah.
that,
Absolutely. We're helping each other and other people see blind spots, and I think that's like the ultimate goal in life, is to just help better yourself and others around you.
right? Isn't that a fun concept?
Yeah,
I love that concept so much. To overfill yourself to the point where you want to spill over into everybody else around you. My dad had this girlfriend named Rain, and Rain had these brilliant moments. And she told me one time, she said, Josh, there's a very thin line between selfishness and self-full. She said, it's always appropriate to be filling yourself, growing yourself, and building yourself. She said it's never appropriate to be selfish. And
mm-hmm.
I have recently discovered that my fears are actually leading me to be selfish in a lot of concepts.
How so?
Um, I discovered one this morning. So I was in this meditation and I was journaling, and I realized that my fear of poverty, my fear of not being able to provide for my family, is actually selfish. And what I mean by that is, here I am sitting at a job, and instead of giving my job 110%, I'm constantly thinking about ways that I can do something different. I'll give you a prime example. So I'm an education director, and I have this incredible opportunity to build new programs and to offer them to the public to help them. And I have a recent affinity with IT work. And so I'm like, let's offer IT. And I'm going to sit in these classes. I'm going to get certified too. And then I don't have to do this anymore. And then I just caught myself like, what the fuck are you thinking, man? Like, how selfish is it that I just stepped away from a primary purpose and goal because I'm afraid that one day it won't be there, and so that I can shift into this occupation? And that's just one way that showed up. And I realized that my fear is driving me to be selfish. It was literally taking me out of the moment where I could be building and progressing and putting me into this imaginary state that didn't exist, never will exist, and was quite frankly a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, I see how you get there. Like, I'm with you on it 100%. But yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about it that way. I agree with you.
And I'll share another personal one too, like with my wife. Like I can choose to be upset with her, and all that does, right? And it's based out of fear. It's based out of stupidity, and and honestly, it's selfishness. If I were more in tune, if I was listening more, then we'd be building, growing, and becoming better. But instead, I'm being selfish, and I'm holding on to a contention. I want to prove something, or I want to justify my fears, and it's completely sidetracking what's possible.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that, man. It's hard to
Well,
identify with that though, because I mean, again, that's something that comes from the ego. Like, fears are usually driven by the ego, you know?
yeah, so I heard David Bayer talk the other day, and I'm still just fascinated by this formula. He said that in his years of coaching, he has found that when people shift back into that primal state, back into fear, that they have believed a lie. And as a coach, you have an advantage over people, right? Because you know their ins and outs, you know how they work, you know their intentions, you know their goals, you know all this stuff. So you can really leverage that against them. And so he said, systematically what he does is he uses that to show somebody how they believed a lie. And
Hmm.
when they realize that they believe that lie, they're instantly free, because they realize that goes against who they are, their core, and then they're instantly back into this creative state, and this ability to manifest, move forward. So what I mean by that is, because I heard that, I have applied a filter, right? And so I like to apply filters to my thought process. So before I follow a thought or entertain a thought, I run it through filters. We've played filters with limitations and abundance, positive, negative, all of that. But this filter is a little bit more dynamic, right? Like, is this true? Is this something I believe in? Does this still serve me? And if it doesn't tick those boxes, then it's gone. And I think more importantly, when I become aware that I am in a primal state, when I am following old patterns, I can use that to help me get out of it. It's one of my tools now, right? Because I just ask myself, when did I start feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? And it's amazing to me that I will trace it back. And for me, a lot of the times it shows up as I'm not worthy, that I don't have faith in myself. I may have made a little mistake. Well, that's okay. I'm here to clean it up, right? And so, but I believed for a minute I may not have the power to do so, or I may not be good enough to do that. And that's what runs me down this path, and it
Yeah.
takes me clean off. So, it's a beautiful tool that I've been imploring, and especially position of being uncomfortable all the time. Um, it's phenomenal to reroute in truth.
Yeah. I mean, you're practicing mindfulness when you do that. Like, when you take a step outside yourself, and like when you're applying that filter, that's just a practice in mindfulness that you're doing right there. And you can look at it simply like that, but you don't have to. Like, that's actually really, really fucking amazing that you can do that, and you're able to take that and apply that to a lot of the different things that you're thinking and thought processes you've had for probably decades, right? Am I wrong?
Oh, dude, yeah, since I was 6, or at least that's the earliest memory I have of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when all this stuff happens. That's when we start thinking the way we think. That's when we start becoming the people we become. And so, like, it takes a lot to go back in and like identify that now, and then just be aware of it. Just being aware of it in itself is an act of like a revolution inside yourself almost, you know? And then
Yeah.
actually, like, being mindful enough to change that, and like take a step back from that mind, that awareness, and like look at that awareness and like look at that thing and be like, this is not, why am I doing this? And then dissect it that way, and then be able to break apart that fear or that limiting belief that you have is profound. That's how you become enlightened. I want to say, like, that's a step towards enlightenment, is just understanding that those things are there, and processing through them. I mean, it's not, that's not necessarily like processing that particular thing might not get you to enlightenment, but it's a step, you know, it gets you closer to source. Absolutely.
You
You know?
know, your mom and I had a conversation actually on my 30th birthday at your house, and she had made mention to enlightenment, and if all of our goal is to ascend, right, or transcend, or however you want to look at that, then enlightenment, lightening your soul, lightening who you are, right, is really a key concept. And here's something that I noticed earlier in my life is when when we start having these deeper conversations and when we really start getting into these core concepts, the room literally gets lighter. The things around start to interact. And I think that this is a core concept that we're starting to evolve into, and that we're starting to realize the impact that we have. And once again, it's a little bit out of my touch, but or grasp, I should say. But I feel it, right? Like the awareness is starting. And how do you know something that you don't know? It's a conundrum, right? Like, yeah. And so you take concepts of you don't know. So if you know you don't know, then there's a part of it that you do know because you know you don't know. And so it becomes this super fun thing. And I think there is physical evidence of this taking place. You look at Star Trek and you look at Back to the Future. You know, they say that in Back to the Future, there were, I don't know, 20, 30 concepts introduced that were technological advancements. Well, now we have completed the majority of those, right? Because once we could imagine, once we could see, oh man, that's a cool concept. How do we get there? How do we do that? As a, as a populace, as a collective consciousness, we've been able to recreate that. We've been able to actually manifest that. So I guess in other words, the real question that I am trying to propose is how deep do we want to go? How much of this do we want to tap into, connect with? What does Abraham Hicks say? Tapped in, turned on, tuned in, and connected to this power that is just constantly welcoming us, beckoning us to go deeper and to be with it. And
Yeah.
I see it as light a lot of the times because I don't know how to
Ab-
describe it.
Absolutely. And when you talk about like these concepts of being self-aware and like being present in your own life, and taking a step back and being mindful of like the things, the fears that you have and the stories that you tell yourself, and you say that that's like enlightening, and it lightens up the room and it lightens up your life. That's literally what you're doing. You live a lighter life when you were able to break yourself free from these fears and these stories and your ego that is constantly trying to weigh, it's weighing you down. It's literally weighing you down to live in fear sometimes.
You know, that's so crazy you say that because one of the coolest meditations that I ever have is where are my thoughts coming from?
Yeah.
Who am I? Right? Because it's become inherently obvious that I'm not my mind, that I'm not really my body, that this is a coexistence with some form of intelligence. And I love to sit and meditate on that. And when you were, speaking about stepping out and evaluating, it really kind of brought that whole thought process back up to me. It's like, well, then where exactly are we? Who exactly are we? What exactly are we? It seems like we're renting this avatar of a physical body, you know?
Right. Totally. But there's value in the human experience too, you know. Like, it's not like if we were just spiritual beings living in a spiritual body, or living in a body, then like there has to be a purpose for us being in these bodies. Like, we have to enjoy this physical experience with our spiritual selves. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
You can't just step aside and like ignore every part of your humanness for the sake of being spiritual or being awakened or being enlightened. Like, you still have to feel everything that you're feeling as a human being so that you can return to source and have that knowledge, that experience, that understanding.
That's what makes that concept of self-love so much easier, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
how could you ever be truly upset with yourself knowing that that's the experiment, that that's the process of life? Um, it seems like a waste to be anything other than in that love space.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're all human. We can't. I don't know. Maybe we can constantly and consistently be in that light and love for some people, right? Because that light and love shows up differently for others. Like you just mentioned, yours is a little bit darker than mine, just in the
Yeah.
core concept. David Goggins doesn't allow himself to be all that fantastically excited, right? Like pushes himself. Then you have the Dalai Lama who consistently practices laughing because it makes him feel good,
Mhm.
And so it's cool to continually carve out our own picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying like that human experience doesn't have to be like coming from a place of pure love or pure light or pure self-awareness and happiness. But it's just a matter of like accepting that you are human, and you can't deny that. You know, even the spiritual process is not about like denying your humanness. It's about just being more connected and being more understanding of the fact that you are also a spiritual being, you know.
And do you think maybe that concept is also greater, right? Like some people don't accept their family, right? And so, accepting your humanness, accepting your physical, accepting your spiritual, accepting these things. I was listening to Deepak the other day, and he was talking about how we have the spiritual, the mental, the physical, but then there's a driving force, that gives all of that energy. And I I had to stop when I heard. I think it was David Bayer referred to that as intelligence,
Mhm.
and um, you're versed in sacred geometry as well. The flower of life, the seed of life, the fruit of life, it's all the same essential geometric pattern.
Mhm.
Well, I heard a person break that down as the concept of Genesis, that took the void and then took that void and let it loop around for a complete thought or complete concept, and then that concept duplicated and it duplicated, and everything's so perfect because it's geometrically it can't go wrong, right? Like you can follow any of those, and new patterns arise every time you duplicate that same perfect pattern over and over and over again.
Yep.
And so um, it gave birth to my awareness to what a matrix truly is, to the concept of what and how a mental capacity can affect a physical reality. And I know we have the water experiment, which is, by still fascinates the shit out of me. And I've been chewing on that for 15 years now. And, just knowing that consciousness is birthed from perfection,
Mhm.
that there's nothing that can go wrong within running any of those patterns. Um, it just seems to be such a core concept, that you can really anchor in and go back to at any point in time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I absolutely love that. I've never. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to apply those concepts on a daily basis. That creation is eternal, you know, and that everything comes from this source, and it's never ending, and it is perfect. You know, it's hard to just like take a step back and be mindful of the fact that like we all come from the same. We're all made of the same stardust, man. We're all made of the same stardust.
That's it. I love this guy. His name's Dr. Paul Masters Leon, and I get an email from he run or used to. He passed away a few years ago, but he used to run the metaphysical college in Sedona or University in Sedona, Arizona, and he had this article the other day that I read that basically said, if you don't learn the concepts, you'll find yourself manifested into another similar realm of existence. And if you don't get it there, that's okay. You'll find yourself manifested in another similar realm of existence. And that there are infinite realms of existence for these basic concepts. And to tie that into the sacred geometry and that consciousness being embedded into everything that's around us. You
Yeah.
know, um, I did a warm up podcast before this, and one of the concepts that I really wanted to share with individuals was that you can talk with the universe. This has always fascinated me. Whether or not you know it or not, you have symbols that you hold very true and tight to you. Um, for example, the peace symbol might literally mean peace to you, or might actually be a symbol of war. A lot of people who were protesting back in the day, when they see a peace symbol, it means something completely different to them, right?
Yeah.
But this concept of symbolism and communication is um, fascinating to me because it's a consistent conversation that you have with yourself and the universe. Um, I think we're gonna have to call our first podcast done here in a second, but really fast, I just want to finish this thought,
Yeah.
and then of course any thought that your or the lovely Amy has here. But I took an experiment several years ago, and I took symbols of how I believed in them, what they meant to me, and I wrote them down on a piece of paper, and I kind of just put it in my drawer and walked away. And I realized that the universe started to communicate with me with those symbols.
Mhm.
And in certain times in my life, these symbols still reoccur for me. And they're not like, oh, that's a coincidence. I mean, we'll have to curb the whole coincidence discussion for another day. I don't believe in it in any way.
Yeah.
You know, then synchronicity would be coincidence, and I just don't buy that either. But I want to encourage people to get in tune with their inner self, with their inner symbols, and start allowing the universe to communicate with them. Because to me, there is this magic, this miracle. Gosh, words are so inert for when you see this symbol and you're like, whoa, and it hits you, and the communication comes through. Like that's what's even more fascinating to me is it's not only that you see that symbol says, hey, remember, relax, you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing. This is what this is supposed to do. And that is one of my symbols. So I grew up with Pink Floyd, and I love Pink Floyd for so many reasons. My wife and I's concept, our song is "Wish You Were Here" because there was a time period where we weren't together, and every time I heard the song, I thought of her. She heard the song, she thought of me. It's a beautiful irony or pun, or I don't even know the correct grammar terminology for it. But um, anyways, the point is that I will hear Pink Floyd in the oddest, strangest, but most perfect times. And I'll give you an example. About 6 months ago or so, I was having a real rough day. I found myself in a place where I just wasn't happy with darn near anything that's going on. And so I took myself out to lunch. I was sitting there at Jason's Deli having a salad, and all of a sudden Pink Floyd came on. And I was like, that's really cool that Pink Floyd's playing in Jason's Deli in Houston, Texas. It seemed very off with the other songs that had been playing before it. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks, like a lightning bolt. And it was like, no, it's because you're exactly where you're supposed to be and doing what you're supposed to be doing. And
Mm.
in walked a person, and this individual set a pen down on my table, and it had a little card on it, and it said, "Hi, I'm deaf. I'm selling this pen for $1. If you would like, leave $1 out. If not, that's okay," or something of that sort. And then it had a symbol for thank you and I love you, and sign language. And so I thought to myself, that's an easy concept. I'll pay $1 to share this experience. Paid $1, and I still have that pen. I call it my lucky pen. And so now here's another symbol, and it's incredible. So the first symbol, was Pink Floyd telling me you're right where you need to be. The lesson came through to me like, hey, buddy, you might be mad about your job, but you don't have to go hustle pens for $1 to make ends meet. Like, you're in a good place. You're doing an okay thing. Like, kind of get over yourself, get outside of your ego. And then that pen became a symbol of luck for me. It became a symbol that life is really good. So this pen continues to resurface in my life. I've had a coworker pocket it, and then a few weeks later come back, and me be in a situation where I'm like, what's going on here? And then, hey, I forgot to give you your pen back. Oh, that's right. No, let's take this on full head force. Like, I've got luck on my side, right? But these are just my symbols, and everybody has their own symbols, and the universe will continue to communicate with you through these symbols. You just have to essentially know what those symbols mean, and the universe speaks more languages than you and I could ever imagine. So.
Mhm. That's beautiful. That's freaking awesome, dude. I absolutely love that. That's fucking great.
Right, super awesome.
Yeah.
So anyways, closing thoughts for the first official podcast.
Yeah, this is great, dude. You look super healthy, super happy. Beard is
Vice
majestic
versa.
as fuck, and I like your setup. It looks good. Like, you look super professional, and yeah, this was awesome. We should definitely do it again.
I agree. Thank you for pushing me out of my comfort zone, man, and being so persistent and helping me get going, and to make this first step, and to really do this. This is incredible, and I think it's awesome that Amy was here to join us as well. And I'm saying that correct, right?
Huh?
Is
Yeah.
Amy? It is Amy.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I'm really bad with names, and then I feel like horrible. But is she sleeping too?
Yeah, she fell asleep. Yeah.
That's funny. My whole house is asleep too, and they're like, "Come on, dude! Like,
Yeah.
you need to get through it." But
Yeah. Next time
um,
we could do it like this weekend during the day if you want to. Like,
that way, I can get loud and out of control.
yeah.
Much love, brother.
Oh,
I
man.
can't thank you enough, and
Absolutely.
you
It was
know,
absolute pleasure. I loved it. Every minute of it.
many blessings, man. And we'll have to. I have to figure out some way to share this with you, and have you be able to look it over. Maybe we'll do some editing. I don't know. Maybe we just produce it raw, but either way, it's such an awesome experience. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing it with me, brother.
For sure. I'll talk to you soon. Love
All
you,
right.
brother.